Hi, and welcome to Podcash, the portable professional development podcast from Cash. My name's Dawn, and I'm the editor of Cash Alumni, the fastest growing professional network of current and future care and education practitioners. You can join us for free at cashalumni.org.uk and get access to articles from subject specialists, careers advisors, access to job vacancies, and our member benefits scheme. So today's episode is a bit of a composite episode made up of two different conversations between myself and Dave Wilson, also known as Great North Dave, because between recording those two conversations, things changed quite dramatically in terms of legislation and the things that we were allowed to do as a population. So Dave kindly gave me some more of his time, and we had another conversation a little bit further into lockdown so that we could make sure that this chat was up to date. Can you introduce yourself?
I can. So my name is David Wilson. I work now as a trail and tour guide, but I also work in an ambassador role with Ordnance Survey on a campaign called Get Outside. And basically the purpose and goals of that is to encourage more people to get outside, not necessarily to get outside on some huge big adventure, but just to encourage people to spend more time outside because of the benefits of it for their mental, physical health and everything like that.
Okay, so I suppose following directly on from that, what are the benefits? Why should we be spending more time outside?
I think sort of as a population we'll become more inclined to stay inside a lot more. We've got all the trappings to stay inside. We're going to have food delivered to the door, everything we need entertainment-wise on TVs, tablets, phones, all that kind of thing. So I think we've just become accustomed to staying inside more, which means we're leading less active lives, and obviously there's all sorts of health complications with that. But on the flip side, the more important side is there's loads of health benefits of just getting outside more. It's not necessarily a case of getting outside more to climb a mountain or run a marathon or anything like that. It is just the basic simple health benefits of getting outside your front door, whether it's 10 minutes of fresh air a day or something like that, just in a different setting to what you're used to. So it's not inside an office, it's not inside the buildings that you work in, it's not inside your own home, it's just somewhere, and it's the old adage of people who would go and walk their dog for 10 minutes or something like that, and it's just that change of environment, that switch off and everything, that has huge health benefits to people. And that can be anything from mental health, so getting out a little bit of fresh air, whether it's sunshine on your face or something like that, and just the mental well-being that comes from that, or the physical benefits. So studies have said that in terms of just steady walking kind of thing, the benefits of it, weight loss, risk of cancer, there's a huge range. Basically anything you can think of, a simple walk can help you towards not getting it or avoiding it and all those kind of things.
And is that because we're designed to be outside and to be moving and to
pretty much
be doing stuff?
Yeah, we are. We weren't designed to be sat at a desk. I think a lot of the health issues we see today, looking at that sort of office environment or sat at a desk, or even just going to sit in a car. A lot of people have to travel a lot for work and everything like that, and even just that position of sitting in a car isn't good for you. Hence the reason that they say you should take regular breaks from that sitting position. And there was lots of work done years ago about sitting being the new smoking kind of thing. So people who sit all day long, are they at risk of this huge range of health issues because of sitting down? And it was found that there was huge issues with it, and off the back of that there's all sorts of things about standing desks and all this kind of thing, and a lot of them are good in theory. I did a thing a while back about standing desks, and in theory it's great, but in practice we're not Google, we're not Facebook, we're not these huge companies who have this culture of it where normal people, normal businesses who have a normal desk at home need to sit at a car, need to sit at a normal desk at work. So it's not really practical that we're all gonna stand up every day at work and everything, despite the benefits of it. So this naturally leads on to, well, how do we get that time? And that comes down to what we're doing in our breaks, lunch breaks, how we're getting to and fro from work, and what we're doing in our spare time and everything.
Great. We are starting to see people get outside a little bit more again now. I was looking at some stats today about people starting to go to places.
Yeah, I think in terms of the whole lockdown situation, I think one thing that came out of it was the importance of the physical exercise aspect of it, because that was drilled, you know what I mean? People must be getting 30 minutes of physical exercise, and then also just the open spaces type thing. So obviously we were being encouraged as a sort of national measure message, which was to be doing that exercise. And I think what that brought home was drawing people, whereas previously, you know, we would sit and watch TV, people play computer games, sit in an office all day, sit in their car and not really think about that. And even for me, once I went to lockdown kind of thing, even for me, you know, I had that regime every day of making sure I did go out and do me 30 minutes and all that kind of thing, even if it was literally 30 minutes around the streets kind of thing, you know what I mean? So it's just that importance that's been brought home to everybody, I think, of the benefits of exercise, but also the benefits of outside. And that's not necessarily outside big open wide green spaces or anything like that. That's outside just getting fresh air.
I think in the normal, like, we'll have that thing where we don't really think about it because you're outside on your way to somewhere. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, you get out your car, walk into an office and all that. Yeah, exactly right.
But during this, there was that whole thing of like, oh no, now we're in the house. Like,
yeah.
Getting outside just for the sake of not being in the house anymore. Is really nice and really valuable.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, we know that in terms of like mental well-being, it's really important to get outside and be in those spaces and not be in your own space all of the time. Seeing things and people. What about physically? I know that there's been a bit of conflict in the media recently, as well as in normal, you know, just discourse between we're all trying to be as healthy as we possibly can because there's this risk there that we need to be really healthy to try and combat, especially the most recent headlines about drivers towards, you know, obesity and that sort of risk there. But actually we're all stuck in the house and feeding our faces full of crap as well. So it's sort of, and that's okay because we're navigating a pandemic. It's hard. What is the balance, do you think, and how can walking help people to get better at all of that stuff? Like,
I think crucially, the big thing that's came out of this is about physical and mental health. You know what I mean? There's been so much since the start of it all in terms of people looking after it, the effects of lockdown on it and all that kind of thing. And I think during lockdown we've realised that there's measures we've got to take to protect our health, in terms of now obviously we're wearing face masks and all this kind of thing. So there's measures that have been imposed or recommended to look after our health. And I think coming out of it and going forward, what we need to be thinking about is those things that we can do in daily life to improve our health as well, because I think that's where we got to a point where we forgot that we lost that not pure focus, but that focus on our own health and well-being and all that kind of thing, because you get so wrapped up in your daily life and, you know, all the things you want to do and enjoy. Whereas now we've been pushed to look at, you know, inwardly to say, well, actually, how do I feel in my head? How do I feel in my body? You know, hand washing, personal hygiene, all of these things have been brought to the fore. And I think that's the important thing. So in terms of something like for what I do in terms of walking,
it doesn't need to be exertion. A lot of what, you know, I sort of talk about and everything, and that is about that literal get outside. That might be you get in the house, you know, you get yourself changed and all that kind of thing, get something comfy on, and again, it might sound daft, but then go and sit in your back garden or your backyard or whatever it is for 10, 15, 20 minutes, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, well, I'll go and sit on my phone for 20 minutes. You know, it might be grab a cuppa and just go and sit for 20 minutes in the fresh air and just soak it up. You know what I mean? There's all sorts of weird and wonderful things go on about, you know, just the benefits of just being in the moment, you know. And I think a lot of us, even, you know, the likes of us who do spend all our times outside, we have our own sort of things where, you know, like the mobile phone or the newspaper or the book, where we need to switch off from that. So for me, a lot of the time it's literally sitting doing nothing. So, you know, if you're out and about and you find a wall to sit on or a hilltop or something like that, it's about just sitting there and just being in the moment and just switching off from everything else. Because again, for me, as an example kind of thing, sometimes, you know, you'll find yourself sat on top of a hill for whatever reason. It sounds a bit bizarre, but sometimes I do find myself just sat on top of a hill.
A lot of your job takes you to the top
of the hill. Not serial killery type thing, you know, not burying bodies or anything like that, but find yourself on top of a hill, and then sometimes, you know, I'll get the map out on my phone out, which has got the maps on, and you'll sit looking what's around you and all this kind of thing. And again, it's still that engaging your brain in your job, which for me, that is my job, to see what's around and think about other things I'm going to do. But for everybody else, it's no different. Don't use your phone and all that kind of thing. Go and sit and just have 10-20 minutes soaking in the fresh air and just, you know, having a moment to yourself without any distractions around, and just listen. Even if your garden is a backyard and there's loads of hustle and bustle and traffic and all that kind of thing, so just sitting and soaking that in is great, just to switch you off from what you've been doing during the course of the day.
I think I realised the benefits of that a few weeks ago when I went on my first hike, and you took us out, NCFE arranged a guided hike for staff, and luckily you were our guide, and about 10 minutes in I lost my mobile phone signal and there was no signal anymore, so I couldn't update Instagram with all of the pretty pictures I was taking of the walk that I was doing, and it made us take less pictures because I wasn't immediately on the internet sort of sharing them with other people, and therefore by about halfway through the walk I'd stopped thinking about the benefits of taking photographs and had started just enjoying where I was. And actually by the end of that hike I was much more rested and relaxed than I was at the beginning of it, when I was sort of thinking that through and thinking about, oh God, I've got to walk 8 and a bit miles and it's, you know, it's going to be hard work. Right. And it was restorative, it was nice, it was, you know, and I think that anxiety of, oh well, I won't have a signal, or oh well, I won't be able to reply to emails, or what if somebody needs us, is something that has become quite a big thing for grown-ups. You know, obviously I'm in a weird age generation in that we grew up without technology, but I got to 13 or 14 and then all of a sudden everybody had a mobile phone and that became our normal. We see a lot of stuff in the media about technology and children, and how children are spending more time indoors, more time on computers, more time sort of not going out and playing. And there's a lot of research now looking at the benefits of things like forest schools for early years teachers, you know, taking kids out and actually doing more in that outdoor space, letting them explore a bit and find out a bit more about the outdoor world. Don't hear a lot about the benefits of that for grown-ups. Do you think that it's similar things in terms of that ability to switch off and that mental health piece and the thing about finding that sort of comfort in sort of solidarity and quiet and peace?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, even for what I do, so I spend a lot of my time outside. I take my mobile phone with us and I take a lot of photographs. You know, I'm on the usual Instagrams, Facebooks, all your social media type stuff, and it's no different for me, you know what I mean? And in some respects, a lot of the people that work in the outdoors are real addicts of social media, and the reason behind that is because they're out and about taking all these beautiful photographs and they become so addicted to that world of, you know, posting stories, pictures, this is where I am, and then it becomes that narcissistic thing of I must take the best picture and all that kind of thing. And that's the same as, you know, everybody in the real world, but in some respects sort of people in my industry have got it the worst because they're in that healthy environment
and there's so much pretty stuff to share.
Yeah, exactly, but it literally I mean, for me it's not too bad because I know it sounds terrible, but I just can't be bothered with it a lot of the time. I take the picture, I get home and think I just can't be bothered to post it, you know what I mean? And so I've just got this phone full of thousands and thousands of photographs, but a lot of people are fully addicted to that. You know, they will get off a walk and they want the Wi-Fi on top of that hill, they're going to post it. So that world's no different to the normal world, if we call it normal, of people who work and want to finish work, go home, switch on their phone and, you know, get engrossed in all the social media and everything like that. And I think the key thing for it is exactly as you said. It's that mental break from it. And again, that doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, I'm going to go for a 6-mile run, because even that in this day and age now is difficult to break away from technology, because a lot of people, as they leave the house, they'll be putting on something to put on your music, which tends to be on their phone,
or tracking their run, so they can share it afterwards.
The amount of times I've been out and then you stop to change the music or something like that, and then you see you've got a text or an email or something like that, and then straight away you've broken that mental cycle of breaking away from it, kind of thing. So in some respects, again, it goes back to just go for a run or a walk. You don't have to take your phone with you, you know what I mean? You don't have to post that you've done X time in, you know, X distance in X time or anything like that. Just go and enjoy that experience. There was loads done again years ago about sort of inside gyms opposed to outside gyms, and what was the difference. And you know, the headline around it was runners who run outside are more intelligent than those who run in a gym. And the principle behind it was, if you're running in a gym, you're on a treadmill, it's got a fixed pace, you're concentrating on that, there's a good chance you're watching maybe a screen or something like that, and you've got that fixed motion, so you don't have to think about any sort of external stimuli, particularly around you. Whereas those that walk or run outside have got all sorts to compete with. So they've got weather, the changing conditions underfoot, you know, external stimuli of traffic or, you know, trees, bushes, all these kind of things. And what the study found was those that just got outside and did the same activity, their brains were far more stimulated, so they basically came up with more benefit in terms of just their brain activity, but in essence they were more relaxed because their brains switched off from their everyday things. Whereas somebody who's running on a treadmill, you can still play all those, you know, emotions and issues from work and all that kind of thing in your head, whereas getting outside, you will be distracted unless, you know, you've got a black heart kind of thing. But, you know, a bit of bird song or seeing something move, you know, I mean, it sounds very poetic and all, you know, but the rustling of the trees and all this kind of thing, these are the things that are embedded in us that do please us, that do bring us pleasure. So getting out, again, just for a simple walk without those distractions can bring all those benefits with us that we don't even realise. And like you were saying about sort of the walk we went on, you do get to that sort of critical point with it where you're thinking about where you're walking, everything around you takes over your brain and all that kind of thing, and you start losing that. And it sounds daft because, you know, I think we probably walk for 4 hours or something like that, maybe. So in that space of time, by the end of it, and again, it sounds daft, you are a different person. You've got a different mindset and all that kind of thing. But it doesn't take you long once you step back into your car and all that, it pulls you back in. But that little mental break of being outside is great. It genuinely does wonders for you, kind of thing, in terms of just that break. But as I say, it doesn't need to be 4 hours. It can be something much, much shorter. Just, you know, going to somewhere, a place that you like. You know, if you're driving home one day and just go, oh, I haven't been, you know, such and such park or pond or something like that, and then a 10-minute walk around it does the world of good, really. So
yeah, I think what's been really weird for me is noticing the difference in my activity levels working in the office and working from home, because I hadn't realised how much passive exercise I get just walking from the car and around the office.
Yeah.
So quite lucky that I've been able to see that, because I wear a fitness tracker, so my Apple Watch tracks every step I take.
Yep.
And normally on just like a base level, like the fewest number of steps I would get in a day would be about 3,000. Just getting out the car, walking up to the office, you know, back and forth to the printer, or going to see someone instead of ringing them, because sometimes it's nicer to see someone face to face at their desk.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, when I started working from home, I had less than 1,000 steps. Like at the end of me working day,
Yeah.
I get that 3,000 just going in, you know. So actively trying to counteract that and make sure that I had a step count that, you know, was going to help us to wind down in the evening, and, you know, not
right.
trapped and stuck, has been useful.
Yeah.
And I think not having the commute has, even as a driver, has really surprised us how much less I was doing just naturally.
Yeah.
I think actually, yeah, I am definitely inclined to do less if I've started doing less. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It makes perfect sense. Human nature. Yeah.
Morning, I just won't get up again, rather than, if you've started moving, I'll keep going.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's basic in terms of just like basic physics, not in terms of human body physics, but basic physics that any body or whatever it is will try and do the least amount it needs to function. You know what I mean? And that's like just a basic physical state, and that's where we just need to push it a little bit beyond. Because in essence, yeah, we will survive if we sit around and do nothing, you know what I mean? Because the body will become accustomed to it. But it's exactly the same as somebody who's, for example, I don't know, maybe it's an Olympic pole vaulter or something like that. They'll train a basic level of fitness, but then they'll focus quite specifically on the level of activity that they're focused on at becoming world champion in. So then if they had an injury, for argument's sake, and then didn't do it for a long, long time, their body would start to regress, kind of thing, going back to that basic level. But then as soon as they went back into the specific exercise, their body's got basically muscle memory. So their body very quickly again starts to remember those specific things they were doing. You know what I mean? So it's exactly the same for us, that, people quite often, they'll do something for a period of time, for argument's sake, lockdown, where they'll increase activity, lockdown, maybe go back to work as normal, and then they'll think, I can never get back to that point of fitness again, or whatever it is, which just isn't true. And you'll find actually, maybe it's through a little bit of pain and suffering initially, as you sort of break that barrier, you'll actually quickly get back into that cycle again, you know what I mean? So it's one of those that people have to feel not disheartened, if they are starting to go back to work and all of a sudden they've lost that nice routine of, being at home, being able to get that 30 minutes an hour exercise every day and a nice routine and all that kind of thing, to just either building that in or building other aspects in, such as walk to work, cycle to work, walking breaks, all that kind of thing. So just building that in. So it's all about routine and process and planning, I think, for a lot of people now, which is, how can I get this into my daily routine where it's not going to impact it too much?
And that'd be really reassuring, I think, for a lot of people who feel like they have lost that during lockdown, especially, people who maybe train in the gym and the gyms have been closed, and
exactly right.
Do that same level of stuff at home. For a lot of reasons, whether it's headspace or physical space, we're not all lucky enough to have a garden or somewhere big enough to walk laps around the coffee table. There's a lot of people living in tiny flats or sharing lots of other people. I know that there are people who are scared about getting back out and doing stuff, and the idea of going for a walk for the sake of going for a walk is still scary. What are the benefits of maybe getting out with someone who knows where to go? What are the benefits of doing some guided walking, maybe, for people who want a bit more space? Yeah,
I think critically you've hit on it, the key point as well, that at the minute, again, it's a little bit media fueled about like hotspots, seeing down south all these beaches, packed with people and all that kind of thing. But critically, especially up here in the northeast, we've got tons of spaces where we can access places where there's not huge amounts of beach places, sort of Northumberland coast, all those kind of things, Northumberland National Park. And yes, some of these places you really need a car to access, but otherwise, there's a whole host of spaces. And sort of to come on to your point of, using a guide of somebody or somebody who's familiar with an area, in essence, what that's going to do is get you out into these open spaces, and ideally, as bad as it sounds these days, away from people. But in essence, I guess some of the fun and enjoyment of it is going out and trying to find your little spot, your little peaceful place where you can go and have your 30 minutes of exercise where it's not crammed with people. You know what I mean? Because people, you're exactly right that it's still going to be the case, and it's going to be the case for a long time, that people won't want to be in crowded areas. You know what I mean? They're just literally going to want to be outdoors, their own space, where they're not face to face with anybody or anything like that, which is perfectly acceptable. So
I think one of the other things that people struggle with often is that we've become a culture that wants to be seen to be working really hard.
Yep.
People don't take lunch breaks, or if
they have an imposed lunch break, they might still sit at their desk and look at the internet rather than going out because they don't want to be missing from the office for an hour.
Yep.
Because that might be noticed. I mean, have you got experience of that?
Yeah, it's exactly right as well, because in essence what you're working towards there is burnout, which is no good for anybody. You know, we are in that culture now where people do feel guilty for having breaks, but there is a flip side to it where there's some people who feel guilty for having breaks, but also there's some people who celebrate not having a break. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There is that, and that creates a negative culture as well. You know, the people that say, well, I've only taken 10-minute lunch break for the last 35 years.
To presenteeism,
Yeah,
isn't it? Like,
you know,
I haven't had a day off sick in 10 years.
Exactly
well,
right.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
But some of us get sick.
Yeah, exactly right. And you know, that's something that, again, going back to the social media thing, we're just drawn into this community where we believe we should be the same as somebody else, or because they're doing something different to us that their way is better or anything, and it's about finding your own fix. It sounds daft, but smokers have got it right. So yes, smoking is terrible for your health, you should not smoke. But what has been created by smoking bans and everything like that is that it's now acceptable and smokers need to go and have a break. So what do? The smokers have their break, they walk outside, they have a smoke. Usually there's some other people there that they'll have a bit chat with. You know what I mean? There might even be a few that they'll have a normal smoking break with. Are you going for your break now? And they do all that. Because from a physical point of view, they need that nicotine. They need to go and have the smoke because they feel, you know, that they need to put it in their body to continue with the day. Now, if I was to say, you know, in your office, for example, well, I need my 10 minutes of fresh air. And if you think about it, 10 minutes walking is half a mile. So if I was to say, oh, well, I need my half a mile walk before I continue on with the rest of my day, people would think I'm crackers, absolutely crackers.
Actually, probably not so much in this office.
Not so much in this office, maybe that's true. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely in places I've worked
But
before.
yet, we accept somebody going out smoking for a break, even though it's detrimental to their health. Because yes, it is from a health point of view, as in terms of physical health, but in terms of mental health, that's actually probably pretty good for them because they're stepping outside, they're having that little bit chat that's probably work but might not be work, and then they're coming back to the desk. Why can't we do that, you know, for the non-smokers, where we actually accept that we all need it? It's going to benefit us all if we bring it into our culture that we're going to just have that 10 minutes, even if it's stood outside, stationary, staring at a wall. You know what I mean? It's still better than just sitting at your desk, because you're exactly right that you will just burn out. And from a productivity point of view, it doesn't work. You know what I mean? I know people think it does, but you're far better having that break during the day and then coming back with a fresh mind. And it seems even like days off, where people, you know, oh well, I'll, you know, when they get asked maybe, oh, can you work your day off this week or something like that. Yes, we've all got the pressures of need the money and all that kind of thing. But sometimes we do need to ensure we keep that day off, because it will just make us more productive. It will make us better in the long term for employers, or, you know, in terms of our working environments and everything like that. Because it's proven, if you're getting outside, you're getting that fresh air, even for short spaces of time, creativity, productivity, brain function, wellness, all these kind of things are all benefited from it. So yeah, I say chase the smokers out the door, and just don't stand too close.
You see, I'm sitting nodding, which obviously nobody can hear me do.
Yes.
But actually, that was one of the things I really missed when I gave up smoking. Was that break. And I'd say that actually, when I was thinking about giving up smoking, it was one of the things that factored into that decision to keep smoking for that extra year, was but I really need an escape.
Yeah.
I think the other thing as well that just sparked in my head as well before, in terms of from a business perspective, obviously we've moved from having loads of meetings where we sit face to face to people in rooms and all this kind of thing, to a sort of more anti-social place now. Like obviously even we're now speaking on a screen kind of thing, where it's previously we might have said, oh well, come in and we'll, you know, sit and have a coffee and go through things. You know what I mean? So, exactly right. So now we've moved to sitting in our own spaces, talking to people on screens, so it's become almost less social. But yet I haven't seen anything really about, well, people can still have meetings, and there's no reason people can't have meetings outside, You know what I mean? So the whole thing we discussed all that time ago about walking meetings and everything like that, all that's still 100% relevant now, and possibly even more so. Walking meetings, walking breaks, all these kind of things, I think probably now going into the future kind of thing as this pans out, is probably more important than ever.
Well, actually, you mentioned that. I remembered, obviously, the conversation that we had pre-lockdown, during lockdown. Apart from anything else, I was trying to edit it and see if I could make a cut of it that would work. But remembering what we were talking about with walking meetings and all the different stuff, I actually implemented some of that using things like the technology that we're using now. So because we have Teams to conduct our meetings through, you know, where as a wellbeing team at NCFE, we've been trying to encourage our colleagues to go out for a walk and have their meeting on a walk if they didn't need their computer. Try to do a little bit of that in lockdown as well. So if I had a meeting that was a Teams meeting, I'd go out and do that whilst walking. Suburbs, so Wi-Fi coverage, you know, internet coverage is pretty good wherever you are. So I've actually been really lucky in that I've been able to do a lot of meetings having a walk, and saying, well, that's half an hour, where actually I know that I've got a half-hour slot here, and wander out and around where I live. And I've been really surprised by how many nice walks there are, like literally from my doorstep.
Exactly right.
Like, I live in Gateshead, you know, it's a bit industrial, you know, it's very much a suburb of an industrial town. But there's so many lovely green spaces and bridle paths and nice walks that go to pretty places like ponds that I didn't know existed. Yeah, exactly. Right at my door, which is amazing.
I know that we've talked a little bit when we did our walk about my health journey, and I wasn't very well this time last year. I was a crutches user fairly permanently, and the idea of pushing when I was tired was sort of the opposite of all of the learning I'd ever had as someone with a chronic illness, in terms of if you're tired you should rest. That's what I was taught. But actually, since we did our hike up in Northumberland, I'd signed up to a walking bet, where every day I have to hit the step count that I've been given for that day based on my previous activity levels, to help to build some resilience towards general walking. And a couple of weeks ago I came home. I'd been at work in London over the weekend, so I worked all day Saturday. I woke up on Sunday morning and I did not want to go outside. I was tired. I wanted to stay in my dramas all day and watch a film, and that was all I wanted to do. But I knew that I had to get these 8,000 steps in, which probably doesn't sound like a lot to a lot of people listening, or just one like you who's really active. But for me, that's a fair number of steps on it.
But Tim, again, even there was an example there of what you did there, which is what everybody does, where you immediately, even though the massive journey you've been on the last 12 months, you immediately said, you know, the number of steps you were trying to do, but then immediately defended yourself with it and said it's not something like I would do or somebody else might do. And that's where we're at, you know what I mean, where we always have to sort of compare our health journeys to somebody else. Whereas, you know, my health journey started probably when I was like 14-year-old as an overweight teen kind of thing. And over the course of that time, I've covered, you know, hundreds of thousands of miles doing all sorts of things. Yours is totally different to mine, but yet we still do that. And again, that's the culture we need to break in our head. That it doesn't matter what I'm doing, it's about what you're doing, and as long as it's a step forward, then that's bloody great. You know what I mean? We don't need to worry about, you know, whether yours is 8,000 or mine's 12 and a half.
No, that's joking. But no, you're right. You know, that is 6 weeks of hitting a certain number of steps every day is a big commitment for me at the minute, and I didn't want to not do it, so I did push. I put my trainers on and I went for a run. It was only going to be a 20-minute run because I know how long it takes us to get the steps in that I need, then considering the steps I'm going to get anyway during a normal day. So set my little timer. I use an app called Zombies Run, where I don't have music on, but I do have a story. So I can hear nature. I can, you know, run in the real world, but every now and again, me comms unit will go, and it's someone up in the watchtower telling us that something's happened and there's a horde of zombies on their way, and I need to run a bit faster. Nice. And And I find that just having that story to guide us a little bit keeps us motivated and keeps us running, rather than slowing down and it becoming a wander. And obviously there's nothing wrong with having a wander, but if I've decided I'm going to go for a run, I want to push myself to do it. And actually I finished that 20 minutes and the story ended. And by that point, even though it was windy and it was rainy, and last weekend, and we do live in the northeast of England, so it's always windy and rainy, it was particularly minging. But I was enjoying being outdoors. I was just enjoying being outside. So I put another chapter on, and then I put another chapter on, and I started going home an hour later because my phone was running out of battery. It was getting dark, and as a woman in her early 30s, you don't run around hills outside in the middle of nowhere when you're dark and it's dark without a phone. So I started going home, and I was sad about not being outside and running anymore and going home, and I never in a million years thought I would ever be that person who would go running in the rain. But I've found such a massive benefit in terms of that mental health piece and that just feeling better. Not particularly tied to anything. It's not tied to anxiety or tied to depression, or there isn't a specific mental health barrier that I'm trying to overcome by running. I didn't realise what the impact on my well-being would be just doing that regularly, doing that 3 or 4 times a week, and actually getting outside a little bit every day. I have found that it's had this massive positive impact just on my well-being.
It's true. We're gonna, it is really easy. We all live busy lives. We all live lives where we're constantly comparing our life to somebody else's lives, and then finding a reason why we shouldn't or can't do something. But the fact is, we probably all do have that capacity to do something, and maybe we do just need to change our mindset away from, I don't want to go and do this physical activity because it's going to tire us, as opposed to, well, I'm going to do it because I know from what I've heard from other people that there is a short-term and a long-term benefit. Long-term, it's going to improve my health, my well-being, all those kind of things, but short-term, I'm going to feel that buzz of, completing a mile run, sort of things like, we said earlier on about technology and the issues with it, but also, you've just told me something there that I've never even heard of, in terms of some zombie thing. Jason's, that sounds really great. But as well, we've got all sorts of other things that can help us. So you couch to 5k, you know what I mean? The amount of people that do the couch to 5k every year now, which is exactly as it says on the tin, it's getting them off the sofa and then getting to a point where they're going to run 5k.
Yeah, and actually that's how I got into the Zombies Run game, is that there is a couch to 5k version of the zombie game. So again, if you're not necessarily like, I'm going to learn how to run, they're all story based. So for people like me, where I'm an academic bookworm and I'm very much not a physical person at all, then that was the way to do it, rather than just someone shouting at us and telling us to run faster. Exactly.
And as well, that's the other side to it. So couch to 5k doesn't talk about couch to 5k in X time. It says couch to 5k because it's not about you must run the fastest 5k. And I remember, so last year, there's this thing called Red January, which is run every day in January. And you get all sorts of people jumping onto it kind of thing. So, where they say, it must be a run and all this kind of thing to compete or be part of it and all that kind of thing. And then there's some people who they'll walk, they'll take the dog for a walk, so in essence they're just being active every day. And obviously they'll post it on social media, and then people will berate them and say, well, it's not actually a run, is it? And all this kind of thing. And that's the issue we're at. You know what I mean? That person's being active and they're using a social media type campaign to encourage them to do it. Cracking, that's the right idea. You know what I mean? That's what we should be doing. But as well, loads of people post their photographs with these little things at the bottom where it's got their time, their distance, elevations and all that. And again, that's really intimidating for people who haven't done anything when they see, some fella running 6 miles and he's doing it in 6.5 minutes a mile and all this.
Definitely one of the things that put me off.
Yeah, and you think, well, I'm never going to get to that, and you don't have to get to that. You know what I mean? And I remember that years ago, and I knew this guy who has done long distance, as in he's walked 30 miles a day for months, covering countries, continents, all this kind of thing. So I was looked up to him and thought, this guy's super fit, a real person to look up to. And then between his runs, he would always have like a big rest period where he wouldn't be doing it. And I remember seeing a post by him where he's like, I'm building up to running, and I think he said like 12-minute miles. And at the time, like I was probably just about 9.5-minute miles I could run and feel like I was dying. But I would never have posted that. I would never have posted, I hope I can get to 8, because mine at 9.5, I thought, well, it just looks ridiculously slow. And then I saw this guy who, covered mile upon mile, day after day, and I thought, he's building up to try and get back to 12 minutes a mile.
I'm faster than him.
And I'm faster than him, you know what I mean? And that's where you realise that, it's a constantly losing battle, whether it be because somebody's, better or worse, if we're going to have that view, it's just a losing battle. Don't compare yourself to somebody else. Just create your own, small goals and targets, manageable. The old saying about don't eat the whole elephant, just eat it in bite-sized chunks and eventually you'll get there. Obviously you can't eat elephants, we're not sort of saying about that either. But it's about that thing, little bite-sized chunks that are just manageable for yourself. And remember as well, what you're doing it for yourself. You're not doing it for the pleasure of others or to prove to somebody else that you're good or worthy or anything like that. You're doing it for yourself because you want to improve either your physical, your mental well-being, and that's, in essence, it is going to do it. It's fact, it's proven that getting outside, be it strenuous or light physical activity outdoors, will bring huge range of benefits. The problems come when we start building into a bigger picture of she's better than me, or building undue pressure on ourselves. Something is better than.
And that judgment has all been in my own head.
Yeah, and again, it comes down to if you're driving along and you see somebody who's running and really struggling to run. There's two types of people: the person that'll laugh and go, "God, look at them! What a clip or what a mess." Then there's a type of person who thinks, "Good on you! You know what I mean? You're doing something." You know what I mean?
There's a third type of person actually, and I think there's a type of person who is secretly going, "Oh, that looks like hard work.
Yeah.
I wish I had your ability just to go and do that."
Exactly. But I remember, if I'm out for a run, and by no means am I a good runner at all, but if I'm out for a run, I'll know in my head if I'm looking like a clip. You know what I mean? In terms of, there's simple things in terms of your posture, how you're carrying yourself, and, yourself, some days you can go for a walk and feel fine, some days you can go into work and you just feel, awful. And sometimes when you're running and you feel awful and you think, God, it must look like a right mess. What I was just thinking in my head is, but that person driving past me now doesn't know if I've just stepped out my door or doesn't know if I've just ran 12 miles. So I'm not bothered, you know what I mean? So all I hope is that they drive past me, I bet that bloke's just run a marathon, just off the bat like that, and that's why he looks like that.
Yeah.
And again, you know what I mean? And it's because we live in our own heads. They don't. Exactly right. So don't stress about it, you know what I mean? You've got to not pay any attention to creating false ideas of what others think of you, in their heads, because it's in their heads.
Thanks, Dave. That's ace. You can find Dave online on Instagram as @GreatNorthDave. He's also on LinkedIn as Dave Wilson. And Dave's book, Day Walks in Northumberland, is out in March 2021. Thanks again for your time. And thanks to you at home. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Podcash. Don't forget, for more great content tailored to everyone in the care and education sectors, you can join our membership network, cashalumni.org.uk. It's free to join and you'll get access to articles from subject specialists, careers advice, job vacancies, and our member benefits scheme. If you'd like to feature on a future episode of Podcash, please get in touch with us through the contact details on the Cash Alumni website. Until next time, take care.